name is Judy VanKooiman, and you're watching Life Issues. December show is about Lift Up Kids, and my guest is Deborah Harris. Welcome, Deborah.
Thank you. Very happy to be here.
I'm glad to have you. Deborah, what is your title?
I am a staff attorney at the Massachusetts Law Reform Institute.
Okay, thank you. And what is Lift Our Kids?
Lift Our Kids is a coalition. Currently 145 Massachusetts organizations. The coalition focuses specifically on welfare programs in Massachusetts, and even more specifically on the two programs that provide cash assistance for families with children in Massachusetts and for elders and disabled people in Massachusetts.
Okay, that's a lot. That's great. And how long have you been involved?
I moved to Massachusetts in 1990, and I've been involved in cash assistance issues in Massachusetts since then. Before that, I was a legal services lawyer in Philadelphia.
Oh, wow.
For quite a while, even before that.
Yeah, so law has been your background for a long time.
That's right.
Yeah. And why was getting involved so important to you?
Oh, getting involved generally in working on cash assistance issues for very, very low-income people. I think that I just always was aware of the experiences of people in deep poverty. I grew up without much money, but I wouldn't say I grew up in deep poverty. But I always saw that there were specific issues for people who were really struggling. Many families struggle, but families that are living in severe poverty are struggling even more.
Yeah. And is this part of the Mass Law Reform Institute and Mass Legal Services?
If by this you mean the Lift Our Kids Coalition, the Lift Our Kids Coalition is, as I said, this group of 145 organizations. I would say that I am one of the people that helps hold it together, and the other main person who helps hold it together is Naomi Meyer, who is at the Greater Boston Legal Services. But there are a number of other people who do a lot of free work for the coalition. Nobody is paid specifically for their work with the coalition, and a lot of people make a lot of contribution of their time, including many of the organizations that are endorsers of the coalition.
And that's part the 145 that you mentioned.
Yes.
Okay, so how would someone go about being on the coalition?
We have organizational members, that's the 145 organizational members, and we have individual members. We're happy to have both. An easy way to become a member is to go to our website, www.liftourkidsma.org, liftourkidsma.org, and there's a join button there. I'm also happy to have people, both individuals and groups, contact me directly to get more information. And my email is dharris, that's no dots in that, for Deborah Harris, at mlri.org. MLRI for Massachusetts Law Reform Institute.
Okay. And what is the impact of the cap on kids?
Well, the cap on kids was the family cap rule. That was the rule that for many years barred what otherwise would be an increment in cash assistance benefits for a child if that child was conceived while the parent was receiving cash assistance. The rules started in 1995 in Massachusetts, and it continued for a long time. During that time, more and more children were barred from benefits. The impact on those children was devastating. the amount of the increment was tiny, $100 a month and $350 a year for a clothing allowance. And Massachusetts denied that $100 a month and the $350 a year clothing allowance to thousands and thousands of children. So the impact was that parents struggled. One parent said, with two children, one of whom was receiving assistance and the younger child was barred, she said, "Somebody is always waiting. If I buy shoes for my 4-year-old, I can't buy diapers for the baby. If I buy diapers for the baby, I can't buy shoes for my 4-year-old. Someone is always waiting." Another mother described to us listening to her two little ones crying in the morning, knowing that what they really needed was a diaper change, and knowing that if she changed their diapers, she would not have enough to last the day.
Oh, so sad, sad. And how many states have a cap on kids?
Well, getting ahead of myself a little bit, the family cap in Massachusetts has been repealed, so we'll talk about that in a minute. So currently, there are 15 states that still have a rule like this, and 9 states, including now Massachusetts, that used to have a rule like this and have repealed their rule.
Okay. And can Massachusetts afford to lift the cap on kids?
Well, Massachusetts did lift the cap on kids in April of 2019, so a little bit more than a year ago. Massachusetts repealed the cap on kids. This was the culmination of a campaign that initially began in November of 2016. We were actually successful in the repeal in 2018, but the governor vetoed the repeal, so it had to be started over again in January of 2019, and then it was moved very quickly through the legislature in order to be enacted in April of 2019.
Okay, thank you. And how has COVID-19 affected Lift Our Kids?
Even though the family cap has been repealed, families are still struggling with very, very, very low cash assistance grants. The maximum cash assistance grant for a family of 3, parent and 2 children, with no countable income at all, is $593 a month. That's the maximum. So that's clearly not enough, even not taking into account COVID. But with COVID, families are struggling even more. And we hear families tell us what they can't do. I can't pay for Wi-Fi so that my child can log in for school. When I go to the grocery store, I can't pay the jacked up prices for products that I need. I can't pay for transportation, for private transportation to get to a supermarket, and I don't feel safe because my child has asthma. I don't feel safe taking public transportation. And also the families talk about the fact that with kids home so much more than previously, they need more snacks. Even if they get food stamps, the children are home, they need snacks, and they also feel that they need additional things just to keep their children entertained, to keep them from getting bored, to keep them from acting out. And there's, with a maximum income of $593 a month, that's just not enough to do what parents feel their children need.
Can't imagine. Lift Our Kids is leading a campaign to lift our kids out of deep poverty. Can you please explain that?
Well, the $593 a month, which is the maximum grant for a family of 3, is about 1/3 of the federal poverty level for a family of 3. The federal poverty level for a family of 3 is now $1,810 a month. So academics and researchers say that if your income is less than half of the poverty level, you are in deep poverty. Half of the poverty level for a family of 3 is $905 a month. So a family whose income is $593 a month is in deep poverty. In January of 2019, anticipating that we would be successful in getting the family cap repealed, we organized a campaign to address the very, very low grant levels in Massachusetts. Grants have not been raised in Massachusetts since the year 2000. They've been frozen since then. Wow. And 2000, there was a 10% grant increase, and that was the first increase since 1988. So grants have lost half of their value since 1988. Which obviously makes it even harder for people on cash assistance to buy what they need. And the current grant is well below that $905 a month of deep poverty. So the bill that was filed in January of 2019 with very, very broad support in the state legislature would have increased grants by 10% a year until the grants reach that deep poverty level. So for the typical family that we've been talking about, that would, over time, and it would take a while, increase the grant from $905 a month to $905 a month.
Okay. What are action alerts?
Well, when we do a campaign like this, there are many stages along the way. So the first step is to get the bill filed. And then what we do is we notify everybody in our network, the 145 organizations, the 1,000 individuals on our mailing list, and we say, please call your legislator, your local legislator, and to ask your legislator to co-sponsor this bill. And sometimes we do it by sending out a form letter, and we say, here's a form letter you can use to make this request. You can personalize it in any way you choose. And when you hit send, it will go to your legislators, even if you're not sure who they are. You don't even have to look it up. So that's an example of an action alert at the beginning of a bill. And as the bill moves through the legislature, there are other actions. So for example, the committee that the bill is assigned to will hold a hearing. So the next action is come to the hearing. And then the bill might get reported out by the committee that it's assigned to. And so there's stages along the way where there are opportunities to be engaged in the process. And I will say it's also an opportunity for people to learn how the process works, if that's something that's of interest. And some of our member organizations participate quite legitimately in order to take back what they learn about the process to the organization that is their primary home so that they can use these ideas for the advocacy that their organization is doing.
Okay. And what are some things that are in the FY21 budget that has to do with Lift Our Kids?
Well, this is such a great question because thanks to COVID, the FY21 budget is in a completely different state from what one would normally expect. FY21 is fiscal year 2021. Fiscal year 2021 began on July 1st of 2020. Because of COVID and all the extra expenses of COVID, and the uncertainty about revenues because of COVID, the legislature did not feel that it was in a position to pass a budget before July 1st of 2020, and so it passed a number of stopgap budgets. The legislature is now working on its final budget for 2021, and the House has passed its proposed budget for fiscal year 2021. The Senate is either finishing theirs today or has finished it while we're sitting here. And then the next step is for the House and Senate to appoint conference committee members, and they will negotiate between the two budgets and pass a budget for fiscal year 2021, which, as I said, began back in July. And in terms of what's in the budget that is specifically related to the Lift Our Kids campaign, the House, in its proposed budget, included a 10% increase in the cash assistance grant. This is historic. It is a huge breakthrough. It shows the commitment of the Speaker of the House and the Chair of Ways and Means in the House to addressing the really very sadly low welfare grants that people who unfortunately are at a point in their lives when they need to rely on cash assistance have to struggle with. So the House included the 10% increase. The Senate did not include the 10% increase, but we are optimistic that the House will stand firm and that there will be a 10% increase in the final budget when it is released.
Okay, great, thank you. I know you mentioned your co-worker earlier, Naomi. She's an attorney with the Welfare Law Unit. What does that entail?
Greater Boston Legal Services provides legal services to families and individuals in the Greater Boston area. Legal services in civil matters only, not in criminal matters. And Greater Boston Legal Services has a unit that specializes in housing, and a unit that specializes in immigration, and a unit that specializes in family law, and so forth. And one of the units is a unit that specializes in welfare law. The welfare law unit specifically focuses on the cash assistance program and also on SNAP benefits, the new name for food stamps, and also on subsidized childcare. So they handle individual cases. People call Greater Boston Legal Services. They identify as having a problem that could be addressed by one of the Greater Boston Legal Services units, and then the client is referred to that unit, who then talks to the client, sees whether or not there's an issue that they can help with, and if there is, then they try to provide help.
Okay, great. All right, is there anything else, Deborah, that you'd like to add for to let our audience know about the Lift Up Your Kids?
Well, I really would encourage people to keep track of whether or not this 10% increase is included in the final budget. And if you can check our website. I'm not very good about updating it, but I'll try to remember to update it. And if it is included in the budget, and I'm really optimistic that it will be included, please, please thank the Speaker, thank the Chair of Ways and Means, thank your own legislator, your representative, and your senator. If you're not sure who that is, let me know. I'll find it for you. Legislators need to know that people care. It really is critical. Sometimes legislators do things and they say, well, none of my constituents cared about it. The press didn't care about it. Nobody cared about it. You know, I feel good that I did the right thing, but it would be nice if somebody's paying attention. So please pay attention and say thank you.
Okay, and on that note, Deborah, I'm sorry, but that's all the time that we have. Thank you, Deborah, for all that you do for those in need. I love to hear your thoughts and suggestions. Please send them to lifeissuestv@gmail.com. And one last note before I sign off, this is my show for my 10th year anniversary hosting Life Issues. I love doing the show each month. I get a lot of compliments, and I learn something new all the time. First, my deepest thanks to my first director, Barbara Bishop. She got me started, and I learned so much from her. Thank you to my home local access cable station, WCAT in Winthrop, all the staff and volunteers, all the other local access cable stations that are airing the show, 12 right now. And the show is on social media, of course. And lastly, thank you to my temp director, Deb, and a huge shout out to my regular director, Matt Rhodes. He is a great access to my show and helps me get through each one. Thank you, Matt. Remember, live each day to the fullest and celebrate life.
There was an old woman who lived in a shoe. She had so many children, she didn't know what to do. She gave them some broth without any bread and kissed them all soundly and put them to bed. Hunger is a story we can end. End it at feedingamerica.org.